Welcome, everybody, to the latest iteration of Nick's Yemen Roundup. I'm your guy, Nick J. Brumfield. Just a bit about myself. I have an MA in Arab Studies from Georgetown University and a decade's experience analyzing Middle East politics, really across the region, not just on Yemen, but I am regularly quoted in international media as it relates to Yemen and its politics. I have an extensive experience in project and data management, GIS capabilities, political risk, business intelligence, and legal consulting. And all of this is just to say that if you like Nick's Yemen's Roundup or the work that I do, feel free to reach out to me at info.nickjbrumfield@gmail.com with professional inquiries. If you don't have any professional inquiries for me, that's absolutely fine. Just don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so that all of your friends can see it. And if any of them possibly have some, they can reach me as well. But with that, we can go ahead and get started with what people are actually here for, which is what's going on in Yemen over the course of the past 2 weeks from October 13th to October 27th. Starting off with international affairs, as always, in particular as it relates to the United Nations, which got into quite a tussle with the Houthis over the course of the last 2 weeks. Starting off the reporting period, we did see on 15 October UN Special Envoy Hans Grunberg met with the Saudi, Emirati, and permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council ambassadors in Riyadh on 15 October, just kind of continuing his attempt to engage with regional stakeholders over that. He did, following the Gaza ceasefire in between 9 and 11, 9, 12 October, he did say that this ceasefire provides a window of opportunity for Yemen to pursue a peace process, which it was reportedly in the middle of, in particular between the Saudis and the Houthis in mid to late 2023, prior to the eruption of the Gaza conflict. Of course, all of this is very much dependent on that ceasefire being maintained. We did see just earlier today, from where I'm at, obviously Israel conducting those airstrikes, and just there's a lot of instability still, and it is very much important to reiterate that a lot depends on if that ceasefire holds, and if it doesn't, then some different things happen. But besides for that, we did see the UN in particular and the Houthis kind of get locked into a pretty significant fight. Starting on 16 October, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, the leader of the Houthi movement, gave his weekly address in which he openly accused the World Food Program, as well as UNICEF and other humanitarian organizations, of harboring U.S. and Israel spy cells, and enjoined Yemenis and his sort of authorities to be vigilant against them. So there's still very much even though there's ostensibly a ceasefire, they're still very much focused on rooting out what they say are U.S. and Israeli spies, but also, it could also mean them trying to kind of assert social control, political authority, that kind of thing. And we did see on 17 October, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, through his spokesman, come out pretty blatantly and just openly reject that these accusations against the UN, and stress the need for the Houthis to respect humanitarian workers and release the several dozen that they have in their custody. The Houthis shot back and said that spies aren't immune, no matter if they're humanitarian workers or otherwise. And we did see that explode really later in the reporting period, which I'll talk about here in a couple slides. Moving on over to international affairs for the Yemeni government, we did see some interesting international connections. On 16 October, we did see Patrick Simonet, who is the new European Union ambassador to Yemen, present his credentials to Presidential Leadership Council Chairman Rashad Al-Alimi in Aden. Not too much going on there, just kind of a continuation, I think, of the European Union involvement in Yemen, and it is fairly extensive. We did see on 17 October, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom, the United States, and France, all of their ambassadors met with Prime Minister Salim bin Barak in Riyadh, during which they stressed the need for the Yemeni government to maintain its unity. We have seen a lot of conflict, in particular among the Presidential Leadership Council, in particular between PLC member and Southern Transitional Council President Idris al-Zubaydi and some of the other members. but also other UAE-backed members supported Zubaidi regarding appointments and who has authority for appointments and everything. And last reporting period, we did sort of see that they kind of just kicked that can down the road. They didn't resolve substantively anything. So I think there's still a lot of international mediation going on to try to get everybody on the same page and come to some kind of an agreement, as in part to support the Yemeni government's ongoing economic reforms that have seen the value of the Yemeni rial significantly appreciate in recent months. We did see on 21 October Presidential Leadership Council Presidential Leadership Council member Idris al-Zubaydi travel to Moscow, where he met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, pictured here on the right, as well as other senior officials within the Russian Foreign Ministry. This isn't unprecedented. Russia, in particular, among the P5 members, has notably maintained contacts, probably the most equidistant contacts among all of Yemen's kind of major factions. They haven't invited the Houthis to Moscow in a very long time, but in recent years they have received delegations from the Yemeni government, from the Southern Transitional Council, from the National Resistance Forces. So they do talk to everybody. Southern Transitional Council aligned media did present this as a victory for the Southern movement, and presented this as Zubaydi traveling to Moscow as STC president rather than being a PLC member. Obviously, Yemeni state media presented him as a PLC member. But we imagine there were a lot of interesting conversations had between him and Russia, which notably was the major backer of the formerly independent state of South Yemen. So we'll see what happens in the next few years. And then last but not least, of course, we did see on 24 October, the United States appointed the current Yemen ambassador, although now I guess former, Stephen Fagan, as the civilian head of the Civilian Military Coordination Center in Gaza. This is one of the main bodies tasked by the United States with preserving the ceasefire in Gaza, and so they picked Fagan. It's unclear who his replacement will be, although he was gone for a little while earlier this year and was replaced in his duties by Charge d'Affaires Jonathan Pecha, who I imagine will be able to pick things up pretty quickly. Whether Fagan, who has experience dealing with a deeply fragmented civil war-like environment, is going to be able to bring something special to the Civilian Military Coordination Center in Gaza remains to be unclear, but it is very clear that he is a career civil servant. He's not a Trump administration appointee, kind of political appointee. He does have experience in these kinds of circumstances. So we will see, and we do hope that he is able to contribute to the preservation of the ceasefire, because a lot of stuff in the region and in Yemen itself really depends on that. Moving on over to politics and governance from the Yemeni government perspective, some things did go down the last 2 weeks. Starting off on 14 October. 14 October is a big day, in particular in Yemen, but also in particular in South Yemen. That is, I believe, the South Yemeni Independence Day, or one of the South Yemeni Independence Days against the British in the 1960s. President Idris al-Zubaydi. There were celebrations throughout southern Yemen, in particular, a notable one being in Shibam and Wadi Hadramaut, which has been a major fault line in conflict between the Southern Transitional Council, which is trying to take over Wadi Hadramaut as part of its project to take control of all of South Yemen, and more pro-unity elements within the Yemeni government that currently control it, namely Islah and a couple other political parties there. But Zubaydi himself attended the 14 October anniversary celebrations in Dale. It's just the more notable ones. We did see on 14 October President Alimi, Presidential Leadership Council Chairman Alimi return to Aden after consultations abroad, primarily in Riyadh, I believe. And while there, he did a couple things. Of course, he did receive the credentials for EU Ambassador Patrick Simonet. He did meet with the leadership of the Consultation and Reconciliation Commission, which is supposed to be something said it was a body set up along with the Presidential Leadership Council to reconcile the various parties, provide a larger forum for reconciliation between the various Yemeni government-aligned parties, discuss unity. Not too much happening there. And then we did see him leave again on 25 October, left Aden for Riyadh for high-level consultations in Riyadh, and seemingly trying to go after economic support, which Saudi Arabia has been more forthcoming in the last month or two as a result of that. We did see Saudi Arabia give $368 million in support to the Yemeni government for budget support. This reporting period, they did sign a couple agreements with the Yemeni government, which I'll talk about here in a couple slides. So yeah, whether he's going to be able to get more than that, we shall see. Maybe from other parties as well. And then yeah, on 26 October, Presidential Leadership Council meeting in Riyadh, notably attended by Prime Minister Salam bin Barak, as well as Central Bank of Yemen and Aden Governor Ahmed Ghalib al-Muwabiti, discussed the need for economic measures to continue economic reforms that have been going fairly well for the Yemeni government, relatively speaking, over the course of the last several months. In terms of politics and governance as it relates to the Houthi movement, a lot of stuff happening the last 2 weeks. Mostly, I would say the most notable sort of thing to come out of this, and several analysts have noted this, is that the Houthis, now that they're done with Israel and have done everything after the ceasefire, they're now turning their guns on Saudi Arabia. They need an external enemy, and so they're trying to find an external enemy in Saudi Arabia, pressure Saudi Arabia and the Yemeni government to give them payoffs or various other things, or pressure them to give them an agreement that they like, whether that means allowing them to rule all of Yemen or something else. It's unclear, but they are very much getting into, even though they've ceased attacks in the Red Sea and against Israel, they're now getting much more aggressive in Yemen, which they haven't necessarily been for the last 2 years. So we did see on 13 October, Supreme Political Council President Mahdi al-Mashad gave his address on the occasion of 14 October, which is celebrated in northern Yemen, even though it started in South Yemen, and in which he called on Saudi Arabia to end quote unquote the aggression, which is what the Houthis call the Saudi-led coalition intervention in Yemen, and said that his forces or the Houthi forces will liberate, quote unquote, every inch of Yemen. And that for them definitely means all of southern Yemen as well. 14 October, we did see reports that GPC leaders are, in particular, the Secretary General of the General People's Congress Sana wing, are still in Houthi detention, facing charges of receiving funds from foreign sources. This came following a Houthi crackdown on the GPC in recent months, even amid, or this was shortly before that Israeli strike on 28 August killed a large portion of GPC leadership in that cabinet meeting that on the Israeli airstrike on that cabinet meeting on 28 August. Another person reportedly killed on 28 August that the Houthis finally acknowledged in this reporting period was Houthi Armed Forces Chief of Staff Mohammed al-Ghamri, Mohammed Abdul Karim al-Ghamri. This was a guy that the Israelis tried to kill several times. There was an airstrike, I want to say in June, that he did survive. And then subsequently in late August, there was another airstrike and they did seemingly kill him there. The Houthis did not acknowledge this until mid-October following the ceasefire. So they trying to maintain PSYOP control, that kind of thing. So on 16 October, the Houthis did acknowledge Ghamri's death and appointed Yusuf al-Madani as their new chief of staff. Who is Yusuf al-Madani? He's not a direct inner member of the Houthi family. He is, I believe, the son-in-law, I want to say, of yes, he is the son-in-law of Houthi movement. The father of the founder of the Houthi movement, Hussein Badr al-Din al-Houthi. He's the brother-in-law of current Houthi movement leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi. He's definitely sort of in there. He's not who I would consider kind of the inner circle of Houthi leadership, but he is very close to the leadership. He has an extensive military background. He's been involved in Houthi military operations for almost 2 decades now. He does have an extensive relationship with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is very important for the Houthis to maintain that relationship because the IRGC gives them a lot of weapons. Muhammad al-Amri also had a good relationship with them. So yeah, so he's I would say a natural choice for this replacement here. He's if there's like first, second, and third string sort of Houthi leaders, I would probably put him on the second to the third, but he is still very important, and people have known his name for a long time now. He's definitely a relatively known quantity. We also did see on 16 October Abdul Malik al-Houthi give that address in which he stressed his readiness to resume attacks on Israel if Israel doesn't uphold the ceasefire in Gaza. And he reiterated this in a 21 October address, his readiness to resume these attacks. So people really need to take this seriously because we have seen, ceasefire violations, various attacks. The Houthis have previously, been willing to step back up after powering down during the first ceasefire in early 2025, and then when Israel blocked all the food going into Gaza, and it looked like it was resuming its attacks. They did resume their attacks. So very pretty sure that if things in Gaza resume, the Houthis will resume their attacks. We also did see 27 October the acting prime minister. Miftah did reiterate sort of the point of the classic Houthi point of the equation, which they use that in the sense of equal, things equals bank for bank, airport for airport, port for port, had not been dropped by Houthi leadership, which this was also kind of taken as a threat against Saudi Arabia. So they've really been laying on that attack. Aggressive rhetoric against Saudi Arabia, essentially saying if you come after our central bank, for instance, which the U.S. and the Yemeni government have been going after the Houthi-aligned central bank with sanctions and everything for the last several months, we're going to come after yours. If you come after our airports, you don't let our airports open, which after those Israeli airstrikes on Sana'a International Airport, I want to say in May of 2025, we haven't seen commercial flights out of Sana'a International Airport. We're going to come for your airports. And the Houthis have threatened Yemeni government-aligned airports before, port for port, U.S. sanctions and Israeli airstrikes and various other things against ships and infrastructure on the Red Sea ports. They've been going on for a very long time now to prevent fuel imports into Houthi-held areas. We're going to come after your ports. So he's very much, it's a very bellicose statement, very saying we're going to come, if you come after us, we're going to come after you. And so now that the Houthis aren't focused on the Gaza conflict, maybe they're going to start changing their attentions to elsewhere. Moving on over, still some more stuff from Houthi movement areas in terms of politics and governance. 18 October, following that 16 October address by Houthi movement leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi, accusing UNICEF, World Food Program, of harboring spies. We did see the Houthis raid a major UN facility on Hada Street in Sana'a, which is a major international organization center in Sana'a, detaining 20 staff and seizing communications equipment in that area. There reportedly 15 of these staff were international. 5 of these staff were Yemeni, belonging to the World Food Program, UNICEF, and UNOCHA. 2 days later, the Houthi forces that stormed this compound reportedly left, with the international staff free inside the compound and the 5 Yemeni staff released. But this was a really, really big deal. Again, they've seized dozens. I believe the current count is roughly 55 UN staff are currently in Houthi custody. And they detained some later in the week, 26 October, they detained 2 female World Food Program workers in Sana'a. And so you did see, obviously a lot of international condemnation of this. 21 October, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed gratitude to Oman for mediating with the Houthis over this, which Oman is really the one international actor besides Iran, really, that the Houthis are willing to talk to and trust. 23 October, we did see 12 of those 15 international staff leave Sana'a on a UN flight, with some reportedly relocating to Jordan. And yeah, we did see that the Houthis continued to detain more people on 25, 26 October. Bit of good news, I guess, at the end of all that is on 26 October, we did see Houthi authorities finally release Yemeni actress and model Intisar al-Hamadi, pictured here on the right, after 4.5 years in prison. For those who were following Yemen 4 years ago, Intisar al-Hamadi was a very big deal. She was essentially just an Instagram model who the Houthis didn't like because she was a relatively, she presented herself in less conservative ways, I guess. And so the Houthis saw that as an attack on morality and went after her on these really trumped up charges, essentially of violating public morality, and imprisoned her for 4.5, 5 years. And they did really unspeakable things to her. And at least now she's out of Houthi custody, which is, it is what it is. Moving on over to military and security, moving in particular behind the front lines in the Yemeni government-held areas. In Aden Governorate, we did see some potentially interesting security incidents throughout the reporting period. On 15 October, we did see the STC-aligned storm forces, which are under the command of Idris al-Zubaydi directly, arrest a former Aden official and Southern resistance activist during a crackdown on 14 October protests that were kind of, criticizing the STC. The STC attempts to present itself as the sole voice for the South Yemeni people, but there are other parties that try to make that claim as well. And so this 14 October celebrations that we did see the STC hold throughout South Yemen, they try to kind of monopolize that voice. And so they did reportedly crack down on other groups organizing that day. 21 October, pro-Houthi media reports that the Subaihat tribe's spokesman, Ahmed Atif al-Subaihi, was kidnapped in Aden as he was leaving the headquarters of the nation's shield forces, which are a Saudi-backed, it's technically not a militia because it is officially affiliated with the Yemeni government, but it's a Saudi-backed kind of armed group. Its headquarters in Aden is in Baraka. That is largely manned by Subaiha tribesmen from southwest Aden. So yeah, he was reportedly kidnapped doing that. And then on 24 October, pro-Houthi media also reported STC Southern resistance clashes in Aden during ongoing electricity protests, which we'll talk about in a bit. To the northeast of Aden in Abyan Governorate, we did see multiple kinetic events. On 21 October, confirmed AQAP attack on the Mahfa district government compound in eastern Abyan Governorate, killed 4 STC-aligned fighters with a car bomb and subsequent infiltration, although 7 militants were killed and the attack was repelled. That was a pretty big AQAP attack for them. They normally do IED attacks on passing STC vehicles in Mudia district, like they kind of did on 23 October. Occasionally they'll ambush some people, but a direct attack on a government compound, that is pretty bold even for them. And we did see on 22 October, STC-aligned security belt forces claim to have arrested 2 Houthi-backed intelligence cells in Abyan Governorate, which they claim, and this is why you need to take this claim with a bit of a grain of salt. They claim that they're behind several important protest movements that we've seen come out of Abyan over the course of the last couple years that have been pretty anti-STC. So they say that these cells have been behind the Ashal protests that have really even extended all the way to Aden over the course of the last year or more, as well as a couple other ones. But yeah, they say that those cells were operating in conjunction with Houthi intelligence in neighboring Baydah Governorate. So something to keep an eye on there. Moving on over to behind the front lines in eastern Yemen, in particular for the Yemeni government, we did see in Shabwa Governorate seemingly a big standoff in coastal Shabwa. On 26 October, with pro-Houthi media reporting that the Shabwa Defense Forces had abducted a Wahidi sheikh in Shabwa, and this resulted in the Lakhmush tribe blocking the international road linking Shabwa with Aden. This is important. This is an important artery for the movement of hydrocarbons, and so it is a common tactic by local tribes or other political actors trying to get various parties to do what they want. So that did occur. In Hadramaut Governorate, we did see on 18 October the director of Wadia border crossing, which is right here on the border with Saudi Arabia. Did survive an assassination attempt at the crossing by unknown gunmen. There's been a lot of politics over who gets to control Wadia border crossing, and perhaps some revenues associated with that, so potentially linked to that. We did see Houthi-aligned media report, and so you got to take it with a grain of salt because they're always trying to play stuff up. On 19 October, Houthi-aligned media said that the Nation Shield Forces 2nd Division head, as well as other Hadramis that are sort of stationed in Hadramaut, in particular along this kind of corridor centered on the Al-Abur junction and its connection with Wadia, a little bit further to the east as well, had been removed, and as well as other Nation Shield Forces members in Hadramaut that had been Hadramis. And this is very important because oftentimes, even though there's a lot of different local militias, people in these regions are very intent on having people from there, being the people who have the guns around them, to be from the area so that they won't abuse them, or so they kind of know them. But according to the Houthis, they removed a lot of these leaders that were from Hadramaut and replaced them with members of the Subayha tribe, which is from the southwest Lahej, very far away, considered kind of outsiders. Which I'm not sure if that's true, but it is, as I said before, the Nation Shield Forces are to a very large extent manned and officered by Subayha tribesmen, so it wouldn't surprise me if there were some stuff moved around there. We also did see on 25 October, Houthi-aligned media say that Saudi Arabia sent 200 military vehicles to the Hadramaut Tribal Alliance-aligned Hadramaut Protection Forces at Hadba. Again, got to take this with a grain of salt, but if this was the case, this is a pretty explicit show of Saudi material support to the HPF, which is not something we've seen all that often. HPF it was formed ostensibly, seemingly in opposition or in protest of various Saudi actions, such as moving in the Nation Shield Forces into areas closer to them and possibly trying to muscle in on their territory. But there have been discussions between the HTA and Saudi Arabia over the course of the last year, so maybe they're moving into a more beneficial relationship or mutually beneficial relationship, particularly in opposition to UAE-backed SDC encroachment from the coast, but unclear. Moving on over to military and security along the front lines, we did see some interesting things of note. We did see on 19 October, Houthi forces claim that a Saudi artillery fire killed a civilian in Shada district. We also did see some Houthi military deployments seemingly along the border in Sada Governorate, again, as part of, which is on the border with the Saudi Arabia. Again, seemingly to kind of put pressure on the Saudis and say, we're going to start doing things. In Marib Governorate, we did see a Houthi commander, Brigadier General Salah al-Salahi, defect on 21 October and was received with open arms by Yemeni government forces. We did see the same day Yemeni government forces claimed to repel a Houthi attack east of Hazm al-Jalf. In Tazq Governorate as well on 25 October, we did see the Southern Giants Brigades also receive a defecting Houthi commander, Sheikh Abdul Ahmed Abdul Awad. These were very widely publicized. Not sure what this spate of publicized defections means, if these are commanders who don't want to be part of any Houthi offensive that's about to start and they just want to get out, or I'm not sure. But we also did see on 22 October, the commander of the Yemeni government 5th Presidential Protection Forces Brigade was injured in a Houthi ambush west of Taz, which again, Houthi military ambushes against military leaders. That's not a great sign. in particular with all of this increased rhetoric about the Houthis saying we're going to start things up again. So just keep an eye on that. We also did see along the Beta front on 26 October, pro-STC media reports that Houthi security forces were killed by a car explosion of unknown origin in Arsh district as well. Moving on over to maritime security in Yemen, we did see on 17 October, Yemen Coast Guard head Kamili meet with French forces commander in Djibouti. The Houthis reported on this and claimed that Israeli Mossad officials were also present at this meeting as part of the ongoing coordination between anti-Houthi forces in Israel, which is definitely the Houthi narrative. It could also have some basis in fact. Obviously, the Israel and the UAE are very close, or relatively close as Arab states with Israel go, and the National Resistance Forces and the Southern Transitional Council, which control essentially all of the Yemeni government-controlled coast of Yemen, are both UAE backed. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was some connection there. But the big maritime security question of the reporting period came on 18 October when there was an explosion on the Cameroon-flagged LPG tanker MV Falcon, which killed 2 and resulted in the tanker's abandonment. This raised significant questions in light of the declaration of a ceasefire on, I think 12 October. Initially, a lot of people said, "Oh, is this a Houthi attack?" The Houthis denied that it was their attack. And in all likelihood, it wasn't their attack because it was a ship heading from Iran, likely heading to the Houthis to give them liquid petroleum gas, which they like when that happens. So likely not them. Initially, UKMTO reported that it was hit by a projectile. The ship had been hit by a projectile. It subsequently retracted that and said that they couldn't determine where the explosion came from. There were reports perhaps that it was an accident, which would not be unprecedented in these waters. Even during the 2-year Houthi attacks on shipping, you did see occasionally reports of ships foundering or getting various different accidents that required ships to be abandoned in the waters off Yemen. So that's not implausible. But the thing everyone's asking is, was this an Israeli covert operation against a ship likely heading from Iran? We do know it was loaded in Iran, likely heading to the Houthis as part of an ongoing even though everyone's declared a ceasefire, Israel's not looking away from the Houthis. Israel's still very much going to be focused on the Houthis to try to put pressure on them. And so that's the big question in everyone's mind. That would also not be unprecedented because we do have, reports such as the Israeli attack on the Iranian ship Indi Savas in the Red Sea in the early 2020s, I believe. So there's a history of Israel attacking, in particular, Iranian naval assets in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden as part of its ongoing kind of fight with Iran and increasingly against the Houthis. If I was a betting man, I would say probably 60% it was Israel, 20 to 30% it was an accident, and 10% it was a Houthi. If I'm assigning values to it, because it just seems like too much of a coincidence, but who knows? One of those things that we'll find out when someone writes a book, 15, 20 years from now. In terms of illicit commerce, we did see the Yemeni government security forces seize another Iranian ship carrying weapons and medical supplies off Lahej Governorate. Again, the latest in a long series of interceptions of Iranian weapons heading ostensibly to the Houthis in Yemen. We did see on 22 October a Mukalla court sentenced 6 Iranians to death for drug smuggling, mostly hashish, but also I think some crystal meth. We did see on 23 October Bellingcat put out another report on Russia essentially sending grain stolen from Ukrainian Crimea to the Houthis around Hodeidah port in Salif. And the Houthis definitely need it because the port infrastructure has been really damaged. And there are reports that maybe there are grain shortages in Houthi-held areas, but that's also illegal under international law, I believe. And we also did see on 27 October, the Yemeni government Interior Minister Ibrahim Haydan reported that security forces had detained a Hezbollah member and a Syrian national at Aden International Airport trying to come in A lot of various Houthi-aligned officials or Houthi-allied officials have been detained at Al International Airport, even though that is Yemeni government controlled, because following the Israeli attacks on Sana'a International Airport in May 2025, you haven't been able to fly out of Sana'a. So they've had to go through there, and so we'll see. We'll probably see more about that in the following reporting period. Moving on over to humanitarian and economic issues. In terms of humanitarian issues, we did see Houthi Deputy Foreign Minister Abul Ras say that the Houthis are preparing to review and amend agreements with all international organizations working in Yemen for Yemeni security. This came right before the Houthis started detaining UN staff members. We did see on 20 October, Saudi Arabia and the Yemeni government signed two agreements, one for Saudi budget support for the Yemeni government and another to provide fuel for electricity, which the Saudi Arabia has done before. They haven't done it in recent years, but there's been a lot of issues with electricity provision in Yemeni government-held areas, so that's welcome. 21 October, we did see Houthi forces also following their various raids on the UN raid offices of Oxfam, the Norwegian Refugee Council, and I believe that the Danish Refugee Council, DRC, offices in Hajjah, and again confiscate the electronics, which is has been a recurring. Even after they've released people, they seem to keep the electronics. Last but not least, moving up, actually second to last, infrastructure. Humanitarian and economic issues as they relate to infrastructure. In terms of air infrastructure, a couple interesting things out this week. On 16 October, we did see pro-Houthi media reports that Presidential Leadership Council Chairman Rashad Al-Alimi and PLC member Tariq Saleh are in an ongoing dispute over whether they can open Mukha Airport, which is the airport for Saleh's main base on the coast there. I'll if I can get annotation, there we go. So it's kind of along the sort of there, and so according to this, Saleh wants it open. Alimi wants the airport to be given over to the Yemeni government as civil aviation authorities, and so again, part of the ongoing confrontation over who has authority to do what in the Yemeni government. We did see on 20 October reports from international media based on satellite evidence that there is a new airstrip being built on Zukur Island in the Hanish Islands between Yemen and Eritrea. And most people kind of agree that this is likely being built by UAE-backed forces, and there's been UAE companies that have been contracted to transport materials and stuff there. If so, this would just be the latest airstrip built by UAE-backed forces in the UAE, really across the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden littoral. Mukha Airport, which is what they're fighting over, was one of these airstrips that the UAE built ostensibly for military purposes, being able to fly things around, surveillance, that kind of thing. And there's been several reports of similar airstrips in Socotra and elsewhere. Even some, I believe, on the island of Bareem in the Bab el-Mandeb, although I think that was discontinued. 21 October, we also did see pro-Houthi media reports that Yemenia was preparing to resume flights from Sana'a to Amman, which was the major route prior to the Israeli airstrikes in May 2025, taking them offline. Unclear if this is actually presaging a reopening of flights, but you can imagine with the Houthis turning up the heat on Saudi Arabia, threatening Saudi airports, all these sorts of things, that is one of the easier things for Saudi Arabia to give the Houthis to get them off their back. They've done it before, where the Houthis will make a lot of noise, and then the Saudis will be like, "Okay, we'll give you flights," and then they'll announce an agreement, and it'll come out, and that'll get the Houthis off their back for a little bit. And that's looking at what the Houthis want and what they've historically wanted and what Saudi Arabia has historically been able to give them, that's been one of the big ones. So we'll see what happens with that. In terms of energy infrastructure, we did see power outages in Aden again after lack of fuel shortages, 22 hours a day. This resulted in protests and crackdowns, that kind of thing. We did see 17 October, the Aden Electricity Corporation mediate the passage of fuel tankers through Ahwar Abiyan governorate after folks tried to block them to put pressure on folks. There was a partial restoration of the President and Mansoura plants in Aden after the arrival of limited fuel, although this quickly, I think, went back down. And then we did see in Shabwa governorate, in the center here, Shabwa governor Ahmed Awad bin al-Wazir al-Awlaki announced that the United Arab Emirates, which is the primary backer of the STC aligned forces in this governorate, announced that the UAE had approved 3 gas-fired plants to be constructed in Shabwa, including one at Belhaf, and then the other ones, I believe, are in Usaylan and Armagh district. This is just the latest UAE energy investment in southern Yemen over the course of the last couple of years, and even in Shabwa just earlier, a couple months ago, they completed the Atak solar plant, 53 megawatts. So that is definitely, a part of an ongoing trend. And then on 25 October, we did Russia announced its readiness to help rehabilitate Aden's Haswa power plant, and said that they them and the Yemeni government had already exchanged documents and stuff over it. So we'll see if that has anything happen there. Last but not least, in terms of banking and currency, we did see between 15 and 16 October, the CBY Aden Governor Ahmed Ghalib al-Muabaki traveled to DC, where he met with various International Monetary Fund and Arab Monetary Fund officials. This was part of a larger event, but he had meetings on the side. This comes following the Yemeni government's recent resumption and conclusion of Article 4 consultations with the IMF after 11 years suspension. So they are definitely trying to get back in with the IMF, probably try to get some international financial support. That never hurts. And then we did see on 18 October, the Yemeni government Customs Authority deny rumors, and this has been something that, in particular, Houthi-aligned media have been putting out a lot over the course of the last several months now. They're not going to liberalize the customs dollar, which is something the Houthis say is going to happen, which would, the customs dollar is what they use to determine conversions, I believe currency conversions when they're importing goods. And so liberalizing it could raise costs for ordinary Yemenis. So that doesn't seem to be happening. But the interesting thing to come out of this report is there's been a slowdown at ports, which made people accuse them of liberalizing the customs dollar. But they said that this was due to merchants refusing to comply with mandates from the National Committee for the Regulation and Financing of Imports regarding setting up using banks to import things through Yemeni government aligned ports. Which this is one of the major kind of planks in the Yemeni government's financial approach, economic approach, that has seen the Yemeni rial appreciate, as you can see here over the course of the last couple months, from close to 3,000 to closer to 1,500, 1,400. So making that work, I think, is a big task, and something that they're going to need to prioritize if they're going to want to make that continue. Although multiple international economic reports have stated that even if they are able to make this continue, the lack of exports, in particular the exports of fuel and other foreign exchange, will likely contribute to reduction in the value of the Yemeni rial long term. It's just not sustainable, but we'll see. If you told someone 6-8 months ago that there was going to be this massive appreciation, they probably would have doubted you. So who knows? So thank you all for listening. I very much appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. If you have any questions, again, or want to reach out, please feel free to reach out to me at info.nickjbrumfield@gmail.com. If you have any more informal questions, feel free also to drop a question in the comments. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much. Have a great day.